Welcome to Train of African Folktales, where true life stories meet timeless African wisdom. Here, every tale is a journey filled with morals, mystery, and the heartbeat of our heritage. Sit back, listen closely, and let the story carry you. Let me tell you the story of a couple, David and Grace by name. Sit back, listen closely as we drive in. Long time ago, there was a beautiful young woman called Grace. She was the kind of woman who carried sunshine with her everywhere she went. Her smile could light up the darkest room, and her heart was gold. Grace believed in love. She believed in people. She believed that if you gave kindness, it would come back to you. She lived in the city, in a small but cozy house with her husband, Daniel, and their sweet little baby girl, Bella. Bella had just turned 8 months old, and every time she laughed, it sounded like music. Everything in Grace's life seemed perfect. A loving husband. A happy baby. A peaceful home filled with laughter and dreams. But, sometimes the people who smile with you during the day are the same ones who plan your pain at night. Grace had a best friend, her name was Victoria. They had grown up like sisters. Not by blood, but by heart. You know the kind of friendship where you finish each other's sentences, cry together, laugh at nonsense, and make promises that sound like forever. That was Grace and Victoria. So, when Victoria lost everything, her job, her apartment, even her confidence, Grace didn't think twice. She opened her door wide and said, "Come in. Stay as long as you need. This is your home too." And just like that, Victoria moved in. At first, everything felt normal. Victoria helped around the house, played with baby Bella, and even made Grace laugh again after long days. But slowly, things began to change. Little things. Victoria would laugh louder when Daniel was around. She would wear tight clothes around the house, even when she wasn't going anywhere. She would call Daniel by pet names like Dan and brush it off with a giggle. Grace didn't say anything at first. She didn't want to believe the strange feeling growing in her chest. After all, Victoria was her best friend. She trusted her like a sister. But Daniel started acting different too. He began staying out late. Coming home smelling of strange perfume. Always on his phone, smiling at messages he wouldn't share. And whenever Grace asked, "Is something wrong?" Daniel would sigh and say, "You're just overthinking things." But Grace's heart knew something wasn't right. Still, she stayed quiet. She didn't want to cause trouble. She didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. Until that evening. The evening that changed everything. Grace came back from the grocery store a little earlier than planned. She opened the front door and heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Not just any kind of laughter, intimate, warm, and close. She tiptoed quietly, heart pounding in her chest. And there, standing together like they were the only two people in the world, were Daniel and Victoria. Victoria was wearing one of Grace's dresses. The one Daniel always said looked beautiful on her. She was stirring soup while Daniel leaned over her shoulder, smiling, whispering something into her ear. They looked too close. Too comfortable. Too familiar. Grace stood there for a moment, frozen. Then she cleared her throat. Victoria turned around, and for a brief second, her eyes looked guilty. But then, she smirked. She actually smirked. And with a voice as sweet as sugar, she said, "Oh, Grace, we didn't hear you coming." Grace didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply said, "Victoria, we need to talk." And Victoria, without flinching, replied, "About what?" That's when Grace knew. She knew she had opened her doors to a snake. She knew something deep had already been broken. But what she didn't know was how far this betrayal would go. Grace didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Beside her, Daniel snored like everything was normal. Like nothing had happened. Like he wasn't slowly drifting into someone else's arms right under her nose. And Victoria. She was sleeping in the guest room like a princess. No shame. No apology. No regret. The next few days were heavy. Daniel hardly spoke to Grace. And when he did, his words were cold and dry, like dust. He started picking fights over small things. He barely looked at Bella. He spent more time on his phone than with his family. And Victoria, well, she stayed longer in the mirror now. Wore lipstick to sit on the couch. Always looked fresh, always smiled when Daniel entered the room. Grace tried to hold on. For her daughter. For her home. For the dreams they once built. But one evening, everything shattered. Daniel came home and called Grace to the living room. Victoria was already sitting there, legs crossed, eyes glowing like she was waiting for a show. Then Daniel said the words that crushed Grace's soul. I want a divorce. Just like that. No explanation. No softness. No shame. Grace stood still. Her baby asleep in her arms. Her heart shaking like a leaf in the wind. And Victoria. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just looked down at her nails and smiled. Grace didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She walked into her room, packed a small bag for herself and her baby, picked up Bella gently, and left. No shouting. No drama. Just quiet pain. She had no plan. No money. No house. All she had was a sleeping baby in her arms and a heart full of wounds. But you see, when the world throws you out, God opens another door. Grace stayed the first night with a kind woman from church, Mrs. Lydia. A warm, older woman who didn't ask too many questions. She just hugged Grace and said, "You are safe here." And that's how Grace's healing began. Day by day. Tear by tear. Mrs. Lydia helped her get a job at a small bakery. Grace worked hard, very hard. She'd wake up before sunrise, prepare Bella's food, drop her off at the creche nearby, and go knead dough with her tired hands. It wasn't easy. But Grace was strong. Stronger than she ever knew. One day at the bakery, a customer walked in. A tall, gentle-looking man named Victor. He ordered a loaf of bread and smiled at Grace like he had known her forever. He came back the next day. And the next. And the next. Not just for bread. But for her smile. They started talking. About life. About pain. About healing. Victor was kind. He never asked too many questions. He just listened. And Grace. She didn't want love. Not again. Not after what she had gone through. But sometimes, love finds you when you're not looking. Months passed. Bella started working. Grace got promoted at the bakery. She moved into a small flat. It wasn't big, but it was hers. And one Sunday morning, Victor asked her to have dinner with him. It was the first time Grace wore lipstick in a long, long time. They talked for hours. He didn't try to fix her pain. He just held her hand. And for the first time in a long while, Grace felt safe. But let me tell you what happened to Daniel and Victoria. After Grace left, they got married. But the happiness didn't last. Daniel started cheating on Victoria just the same way he cheated on Grace. Victoria tried to pretend like everything was perfect, but deep down, she was never satisfied. The guilt ate her from inside. Soon, Daniel lost his job. The company he worked for shut down. Money problems began. Fights started. The home turned cold. And one day, Daniel came home and found Victoria gone. She took everything she could carry, including his savings. She left him a note. Now you know how it feels. Daniel sat alone in that empty house. No wife. No child. No love. And Grace. She was glowing. She opened a small cake shop with the savings she made. Named it Bella's Bites. It became one of the most loved bakeries in the neighborhood. Victor proposed to her in front of her shop, Bella Bites. She was holding a cupcake. Grace cried. Not from sadness this time, but from joy. She said yes. They got married in a small, simple ceremony filled with real smiles and true friends. And Bella? She danced like a little fairy all evening long. Grace finally had her peace. She finally had her happiness. Because sometimes, when life breaks your heart, it's not the end. It's the beginning of something better. My dear viewers, this is how Grace rose from betrayal and found a love that was true. Her story reminds us that no matter how deep the pain, healing is possible, and the people who walk away from you are never meant to stay. Sometimes, the ones who break you only push you closer to the ones who will truly love you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Train of African Folktales. Thanks for watching, see you in my next episode.